My guest today is Mr. Otega Ogra. He's a senior special assistant on digital and new media to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He joins me live from our Abuja studios. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining the program.
Good afternoon, Tolu. How are you?
Well, I'm good, and it's really good to see you. Well, I think we should.
Good to see you, too.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's start with inflation figures that we saw for the month of March. I would say, or I would think that you were also expecting an uptick, considering the fact that the fallout of energy prices, what is happening in the Middle East, and all of that. But let me allow you. We've gotten inputs from the expert side. You're in government. Tell us how this came to you, what you were expecting, and what do you think are the fundamentals surrounding these new figures?
So globally, I think every government in the world was expecting some high level of inflation, based on the conflict in the Middle East. Personally, I actually expected the numbers to be a lot higher, but it seems to me and majority of Nigerians that a lot of the policies we put in place have actually checked the inflation figures. I mean, it's still very muted. It's the first inflation, rise that we've seen in a couple of quarters. And that's kudos to, Mr. President and his team, for putting in a lot of, mitigants in place to check rising inflation. And I'm still very much happy with the food inflation figures, which just grew from, I think, 4.17% to 4.69%. I recently saw a report on Al Jazeera recently, and it showed that a lot of Nigerians who were in conflict-related zones are going back to their farms. What this simply means is that there's more food at the markets, there's more food on the table, for people to be able to buy locally produced food. So that's sort of, has dampened the impact of a lot of the Middle Eastern conflict on Nigeria. On the energy side, we still see a little bit of a rise. But last month, the president already said PCNGI, the presidential initiative on CNG and electric vehicles, should ensure the release of 100,000 more, conversion kits into the markets. This is to enable people switch to CNG, to gas, which is a cheaper alternative to petrol at the moment. But on the positive side, I mean, we're seeing the capital markets. That's a very, very positive for this government. The ASI has hit, 201,000 basis points. You're seeing more than 500,000 young Nigerians, retail investors especially, going to the stock market. So I think as a whole, if you look at the numbers, especially looking at it over time, from last year to now, rather than a very short period of time, I think we're doing good. Nigeria is better able to survive, external shocks. But more still needs to be done, and more will be done.
Indeed, I heard the coordinating minister of the economy, stay on this, talking about how the reforms have helped to, reduce the impact of this Middle East crisis in its entirety. But as it is, and the impact on fuel prices and, of course, white products, many Nigerians are already talking about interventions. They are thinking that one way or the other, maybe there should be one or two things that should be done. I don't know if you're also thinking along that line, or government is thinking along that line.
I think for this administration, the most important thing is any sort of interventions that it does must be structurally sound and must be an intervention that does not leave room for abuse, like the former subsidy, crime of a thing. So the government is currently, interacting with all the stakeholders. Consultations are going on, and we'll see how we can, support not just the oil and gas sector, but also manufacturing, and other industries, to see how, we can cushion the effect for all Nigerians. But if and when any intervention is done, it will be done in a way that is structurally sound, in a way that does not open Nigeria to, our economy to abuse and rent-seeking, and in a way that benefits the Nigerian people first and foremost. But beyond that, you see, Mr. President had a meeting with the governors recently, and he repeated his now famous trope. Development must start at the grassroots, must get to those at the grassroots. We need to see the subnationals, that's the local and state governments, do a lot more in ensuring that people at the grassroots can begin to feel the dividends of the stability in the economy that Mr. President has brought about. So that, for me, would be very, very critical going forward.
Now, crude oil is trading, of course, in some cases above $100, and many say it's more money for government really at this time as we prepare for the 2026 budget. So some are like, what is happening with regards to this excess that might be coming one way or the other? While on the other hand, again, back to issues of support for the populace. So when we have more money coming in like this, what in your thoughts should be the right thing to be done by government?
You know, I think it's very important that we do not begin to translate the idea of more money into meaning that government can just spend anyhow. You know, if you're aware, Nigeria runs the deficit budgets.
Yeah.
More money helps to reduce that deficit. More money means that you can put in more money into, you know, investments and infrastructure. You can put in that money into, you know, even further stabilizing the economy and, you know, creating an enabling environment for more industries to thrive. So more money does not automatically, you know, translates, there's more revenue coming in does not automatically translate to, you know, more money being available to spend. Don't forget that we're also still trying to bring down our debts, you know, service ratio. We've done excellently well, you know, taking it down from every 92 kobo spending 92 kobo out of every 1 naira that we earn to currently about 68 kobo, you know, and below. So I think there's room. We have more fiscal room to act. The government has more room, you know, to mitigate further. If this conflict in the Middle East continues for a longer period of time, then the government has, you know, more means, you know, to mitigate the impact on Nigerians, you know, further.
All right, then. IMF is also saying in their last report that Nigeria must sustain the reform momentum despite the limited fiscal space. That's talking about the challenges that we have. So are you also saying that government is going to follow through despite all of these challenges?
Tolu, the biggest issue Nigeria has had in, you know, its tens of decades of existence is the inability of successive governments, you know, to follow through on reforms, which may be painful in the short term, but in the long term are beneficial to Nigerians today and Nigerians yet unborn. The most important, you know, thing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can do today is to continue to focus on the great job he's doing in, you know, reshaping Nigeria's economy. Is to continue to stay focused on the path to, you know, sustainability and progress and prosperity for Nigeria and Nigerians as a whole. So yes, we'll be staying true to our reform agenda, but most importantly, we are not rigid in our application of the reforms. Where needs be, where we need to shift course a little bit to accommodate, you know, issues like what is currently going on in the Middle East. Trust President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to listen to the cries of Nigerians, to go back to the drawing board and see how we can mitigate the effects of that on the people. So yes, we'll continue our reforms. I know it's getting into the political season. The opposition is trying to do their very best to distract Mr. President. But if you've known him from his time in Lagos, from his time being an administrator, from his time out of government, is someone who doesn't lose focus over the tears of other people. So Mr. President will continue his reform agenda. It's well written in his manifesto. He needs to see it through for Nigeria to thrive for the long term.
Exactly. That takes me to my next question. We could even say months now to the next election, and many are worried that there might be a shift from policy initiatives, policy institutions, you know, following through and all of that, and maybe politicking might take the entire space. Some say that might be a threat for the gains that we've made with these reforms. I'd like you to react to that.
You know, at the back of every successful reform program, you have successful, institutions. You have strong institutions that can do their work without fear of executive interference. One thing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done is he has given, especially regulators, the powers and the independence that they need, as set out in their enabling laws. So you're seeing regulators like the Securities and Exchange Commission, doing an excellent work with the Nigerian capital markets. We're seeing everything, going up across all metrics, whether it's, the ASI, whether it's the recent banking recapitalization, that brought in 4.65 trillion, into the capital markets, whether it's in terms of the retail investors that are now using, they are now on the capital markets, over 500,000 people, especially young people, using that, whether it's the 29.1, trillion in equity gains, since they've come in, at least this year alone. So when you look at things from that perspective, regulators will regulate. There will be hardly any interference from the political side. But as the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is fully focused on the work of governance. No opposition, no politicking, no campaign is going to take President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's eyes away from the ball. And the vision is to ensure that Nigeria is well placed, by the reforms that we're taking now to become a 1 trillion economy by 2030. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is focused. All his aides, everyone working with him, we're all focused. Our eyes are on the ball. And, those who, once claimed that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's policies will be the best of Nigeria, and because of politics, they're taking different opinions now, they would have to go back to the drawing board and look for someone else to, to disrupt their time or to lose focus, but certainly not Mr. President and his team. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let's talk about stability that we've seen in the foreign exchange market. I'm sure we've had this conversation many times, Mr. Ogra, on this show, where we talked about what Mr. Cardoso has been doing, and still lots of commendations for Mr. Cardoso, I must say. But let me ask you, even as at yesterday, the Naira strengthened against the greenback, and many will say, well, that's a step in the right direction. What do you make of that stability? Our reserves are also looking I think a bit dependable, talking about number of months of exports it could cover. What would you say about this and the handshake between the CBN and the Ministry of Finance?
I mean, I would use the words of a potential candidate in the next elections on a TV interview recently, and he basically said stability of the foreign exchange markets is what he would have pursued. But here's the news. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, through the Central Bank of Nigeria under Mr. Cardoso, has done it. And for me, and as well as a lot of Nigerians who took advantage of, the reforms, earlier on of the reforms, and announcing a lot of exports, this stability has given them, a lot of revenue, a lot of room to do more, a lot of room to, expand their businesses and the rest. I say, go and look at the top, the fastest growing economies in the world. A lot of them have, exchange rates, in the tens of thousands, 10,000, 24,000, Vietnam, Thailand, and Indonesia, for instance. But Nigeria has found a way to maintain that stability at that rate. People can now plan ahead. A lot of businesses are able to do long-term planning, no longer planning based on the next cycle of the CBN, NPR meetings. People are planning for long-term basis. People are investing more in the Nigerian economy. Just yesterday, I got a call from a friend, who works in one of the investment banks in South Africa, and they're bringing, some of the largest Africa-focused fund managers, almost $450 billion of funds of assets under management, to come and see the Nigeria story from the beginning of next month. That's because, foreigners are looking at it. They're trying to see what is Nigeria doing right. The World Bank MD came here the other day, and, she said it very, very clearly. Nigeria, our success story, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's reforms, are now what they use as, as a miracle story and as a story for others to, take advantage of. I mean, if we had decided, like the question you asked me earlier about the political space, if we had decided to go the route of, two of the candidates in the last election who said, we should have followed Argentina or Ghana, Nigeria would not be where we are today. Nigeria and Nigerians will be wallowing in one of the worst economic, setbacks it has ever experienced. But thanks to the foresight of Mr. President, thanks to him for allowing the regulators and the key institutions to do their job, like the CBN, like the SEC, like FIRS, like NUPRC and NMDPRA, they are all working the way they're structured to work. Where the president needs to help, he puts in the right executive order. Where we need to go to the National Assembly, we go to the National Assembly seeking changes to the proper acts, like we did with the Nigerian Electricity Act. So I think the future is bright. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will continue to ignore, the naysayers and people who want to put politics first rather than the interests of Nigerians first. But Nigeria will thrive and Nigeria will be better under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Interesting stuff. Now, let's take a step further and talk again. Let's go to the price of white products, petrol, diesel, and all of that. I want to take you back to ask you this question. What is the role of local refining in all of this? Because many will come to tell you that, oh, we waited so long for Dangote refinery to come on stream. We know that the likes of BUA are also coming on stream also with their refinery soon. And everyone thinks that if we dip in local refining, we should be able to address some of these shortcomings, particularly with regards to the issue of pricing.
So at the end of the day, you see the oil and gas sector, especially the downstream sector, it operates on a free market basis. You have the Dangote refinery, which, for all intents and purposes has done an excellent work, in ensuring availability of the products, locally refined products. It's reduced our dependence on imports. And, it's also right now also helping, international organizations, other countries across Africa, to meet the shortfalls that they've had occasioned by the war in the Middle East. But as Mr. President he has always said, we need more people to come and invest in these sectors. We need more people to go into the refining, sector, and the government will provide everything needed, to get that done. Is there room for improvements? Is there room for, stakeholders to discuss in terms of the rising prices and everything? Yes, I think that there's room, but I would rather leave that to, the regulators to do their jobs. If the prices are arbitrary, then it's the job of the regulator to do his job. But as for the president, it will continue to, as much as possible, not interfere in regulators doing the job, but where it affects the Nigerian people, be sure that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will take the necessary action to ensure that Nigerians will not be at the end of the stick. But I need to correct an assumption that a lot of people have, and that assumption is that when there is local refining in the country cannot export and cannot import, white products. That is one of the wrongest assumptions I've always seen. The United States of America, for instance, has sufficient refining capacity. Yet it's one of the largest importers, of fuel and everything. So depending on each country's energy needs, depending on each country's energy sovereignty needs, they make those decisions as to what they import, what goes from the local refineries into the local markets, and what goes from the local refineries into export markets. So Nigeria will continue to follow, the path that is in the best interest of Nigeria and Nigerians.
Now, almost finally, let's touch on the tax laws and all. It's been a while, and everyone seems to be calm now. They're beginning to see it being implemented. Those that are below 900,000 per annum are no more paying taxes. And I think everyone is coming to tune to understand that this is really the way to go. Any updates with regards to the implementation of the tax laws and all of that? I saw the commissioning of the NRS building also earlier this week.
So I must give kudos to the NRS and, the current minister of the NRS under Dr. Zak Adideji and the current minister of State for Finance, who led, the tax committee. They did such an excellent job, fixing a tax system that's for over 60 years, nothing major, nothing sensible had been done with. We cannot get to our 1 trillion naira economy, dollars economy without, having a proper tax system that can meet the demands of the modern world. With digitization and everything, I hope to see a lot more compliance. I hope to see a lot more Nigerians, paying their rightful taxes. And the thing is, when you pay your taxes, you're in a better standing to demand more accountability from the government on how your taxes are spent. So it's a very simple message, Nigerians. Now you can see it. Now you know that a lot of people who are in the bottom rungs of the society in terms of earnings do not have to pay a lot of the draconian taxes that they were forced to pay and contribute to the national purse. You're seeing now fund, taking away the issues or the problems of paying school fees for a lot of families away from their hands and putting that burden on the government. That's also a social impact scheme. You're seeing, the MREIF enabling, that's the Real Estate Fund, helping, which is in conjunction between MOFI and some other organizations, helping a lot of people become first-time house owners, or also first-time develop buildings and everything for people. You're seeing the renewable housing estates coming across the country. So as much as the tax laws have been passed, the government has also put in place a lot of cushions and incentives for people to take advantage of, to help them have more more income on their hands, to help them to be able to spend more, to help them to be able to stimulate the local economies more. But the most important thing is, whilst you're doing all of this, remember to pay your taxes. Because
Indeed.
That's the only way the government can have more money, as well as other things it does, to take care of you, so that you can demand more accountability from the government.
Indeed, I would demand when I'm paying my tax. Now, before I let you go, some good news in now State House press release. President Bola Tinubu assents to 2026 appropriation bill and 2025 budget extension. The bill provides an aggregate expenditure of 68.3 trillion naira. He also signed a bill extending implementation period for 2025 budget to March 31st, 2026, now to June 30, 2026. I think we'll wrap up with that. That seems to be another good one coming in now, President signing the budget. How would you react to that? Because I'm sure you must have heard about this earlier today.
Yes. I mean, I heard about it just when I was coming here. That was why I almost didn't come here.
Okay.
But I think for me, 68.33, that's the biggest, budget that we'll ever have. But also, I want to praise the president for also extending, the previous budgets, which we believe still has some room for, further more complete implementation to the new date of June 30th. But most importantly, we do hope we'll see a better implementation rates on this budget than the last budget, because it is very, very important, given the global headwinds and where they're going at the moment, for us to do better with our budget implementation. But the executive will always do what it needs to do to ensure, under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to ensure that Nigeria can, take care of itself. Nigeria can continue to look inwards. Nigeria can continue to add more value to its resources, whether agricultural, whether mining, or whatsoever, within the country, so that we can be exporting more value-added products, value-added services outside this country. That's the only way that even a well-implemented budget would make sense for all Nigerians. And just watch out, look at how we're doing, and please don't also forget to, call us to task if you think that we're doing anything that is not in the best interest of all Nigerians. But I trust President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I trust the team that he's working with, and I trust that Nigeria would be better off for it with the implementation of this budget.
Thank you so much. It's a good way to live it. Mr. Ortega-Ogra is the Senior Special Assistant on Digital and New Media to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon with us. We really do appreciate this. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your weekend.